According to friend ContraPoints, if we listen to pop music, we deserve Justin Bieber. Apparently. Let's do this. Hey everybody, BionicDance here. So, as most of you know, ordinarily I set my sights on religion, but today I watched a video by ContraPoints, also known as Nicotine 2, and he was talking about music, and the music we like, the music we don't like, pop music, music we look down on, that kind of thing. And it seemed to me that this was a subject I actually do care about quite a bit. Now, I fully recognize that I am quite possibly in the minority on this one. In fact, I'm pretty darn sure I am. But at the same time, I think that there are some insights I could have that might be useful. So I would like to discuss it just a little bit. Here we go.
I just watched a little 4TV clip, which was an interview with the great American composer John Adams, who's famous for, among other things, writing this opera Nixon in China. But in the video, which I'll put a link to in the bottom, he expresses the situation that he feels he's in as a composer of classical music, if we accept that label, in America, a country in which really popular music is the only artistic musical form that has any prestige. And he sort of speculates about why classical music is viewed with suspicion, even, is the word he uses in the United States. And he speculates that it has to do with the Puritans, with the combination of sort of religious zealotry and venture capitalism. And I think he's got it more or less right.
Well, I'm not so sure that he does, honestly. In many ways, art is supposed to make us feel something. I mean, no matter what it is, we are meant to feel or be told a story that makes us feel or something when it comes to art, right? Music is supposed to make us feel a certain way. And the fact is that for a lot of us, so-called classical music or just plain orchestral music doesn't make us feel what we want. For many of us, rock and roll will, make us throw up the horns and bob our heads and do all that stuff. And that's what we want. We want that sort of adrenaline rush feel that very rarely do you get from orchestral music. The only time I've ever gotten it has been from movie scores, really. I mean, there'll be that scene where Luke's about to blow up the Death Star. Dun, 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 and it's like, wow, that was a thrill. That was fun. What that made me feel is something I want to feel again. It's something that perhaps when I put my rollerblades on and I'm going down the Burke-Gilman Trail, I want that going in my head to spur me along, to get me in the mood. That's what it's there for. Now maybe, like I say, maybe I'm in the minority on this. Maybe I'm not after music that makes me feel, but I don't think so. I think a lot of people out there, whether they realize it consciously or not, do actually want to feel something from the music they're listening to, and that makes a huge difference to what they listen to, and unfortunately orchestral music doesn't normally do it for them. So, yeah, I mean, maybe that's it, I don't know. But I'm not so sure it has to do with the Puritans. I mean, okay, sure. As far as marketing, maybe it's marketed a certain way where, only rock and roll is cool and it's the geeks and the nerds with the glasses and the bow ties and sweater vests and shit that like classical music. I don't know. But for the most part, I want to say that my love of one style of music, one genre of music over another is pretty much entirely based on how it makes me feel emotionally. And that's what makes me want to listen to it. And, it's not only that. I mean, okay, here's a good example. Take Pachelbel's Canon in D. Pretty typical bit of music. In fact, if any kind of classical, although I think it might be Baroque actually, but I'm not sure. Regardless, any kind of old school music that's popular of any, that is the closest to pop music. Pachelbel's Canon in D. I'd have to say that is the closest to where people today would be able to just pick it out of a song lineup, right? So, with that in mind, I have at least 4 different versions of Pachelbel's Canon in D. I have string quartet, full-on orchestra, rock and roll, and not Irish drinking songs, Scottish bagpipes. That's right. So, depending on my mood, on what I want to feel, I can listen to the same kind of music in multiple genres, and it's perfect, right? So it's not necessarily the notes used. It's not necessarily the song itself. It may just be that the genre makes people feel different ways, and unfortunately, so-called classical music lacks certain ways. There are just certain ways it doesn't make people feel, and that's why they don't choose it as often. But maybe I'm wrong. That's just my guess here.
But his points about the suspicion with which classical music is regarded sort of mirror something I said in a couple of videos ago in my Notorious Avengers commentary, in which I said that in a lot of action movies, not superhero movies, action movies, the villain is this like classical music listening, wine drinking, European aristocratic, cultured type, who has to have this like big dumb American beat him up, And a lot of people actually reacted against my comment to that effect, basically, saying that, well, clearly I'm projecting myself onto the villain instead of the protagonist of these movies. No wonder I don't like them.
Which kind of goes to what I was planning on saying on this particular topic, is that it kind of works both ways, the suspicion. I mean, there are certainly stereotypes of the people who listen to rock and roll. There are certainly stereotypes of the people who listen to classical. So it seems to me that if you're going to try to appeal to the pop culture who are listening to the rock and roll, the hero's got to listen to it. And a lot of times there will be people who do act kind of snobby about their classical music, where they're like, oh, I don't listen to that horrible bass, low claptrap, all that stuff, where it's like they look down on rock and roll. And it does make me wonder, like, what if I took their favorite classical piece and played it as rock, and said to them, well, what do you think of it now? It's the exact same music, just different instruments, different mood. It only feels differently, but it's otherwise the same bit of music. What would they say? I have a feeling they'd hate it. I'd have a feeling that their instant reaction would be, well, this isn't nearly as good as the stuff that uses violins and cellos and stuff, because, well, I don't know why, but I have a feeling that there just is a kind of cultural difference here. That some of us just like to hear our music loud and exciting, and don't really want to hear it played by, I don't know, not string, because guitars have strings, but, don't want to hear it played in that sort of orchestral sound, that it doesn't reach us the way it would otherwise. I mean, this composer that you mentioned at the beginning, what would happen if he composed for rock instruments, but it was otherwise the exact same kind of music that he's doing now, this sort of so-called classical? I mean, I think classical had to refer to dates originally, but that's beside the point. Let's just call it classical music so I can stop saying so-called. Point is, what if he did that composing for rock instruments, but it was otherwise the same? Would it lose its value? Do you think the culture would like it or hate it more? I mean, I can point to people like, say, Joe Satriani or Eric Johnson. These are composers who, I mean, purely instrumental, and it's all on, like, rock instruments, but oh my goodness, is it powerful stuff. So, I mean, what would the difference be, really? Is it the instruments, or is it the style? Is it the instruments or the level of quality? What actually matters? Is it the mood? That's what I wonder, because I'm not so sure that it's just a matter of pop music versus classical music. I have a feeling that you can reach more people by appealing to what makes them go, ooh. And the amount of quality, complexity, whatever, doesn't matter nearly as much as you think it does. I'm just saying.
There's really something wrong with American culture in that our love of business, of capitalism, of money, of commodities has resulted in us having an extremely impoverished artistic culture. By which I mostly mean the mainstream culture. Not that there's not good American art. Of course there is. America has been, a producer of some of the world's best art in the last 100 years. But a lot of the great American art goes completely ignored in this country.
Okay, this is going to kind of sound like a cheap shot. It's not meant as one. But my question is, well, isn't great art subjective? I mean, what makes something great art necessarily? If it's not reaching people, then as much as we may love it, or you may love it, or someone else may love it, that doesn't necessarily make it great art. I mean, there are plenty of just bits of pop culture I could point to that the rest of pop culture never really latched onto, at least not as much as I did. And I think that they're missing out. I think that they didn't get to see some really amazing pop culture. But, majority rules on this one, I'm thinking. I can point to some comic books or movies that got completely ignored. What you gonna do? So, I mean, if there is stuff that you consider great art that the rest of the world just isn't connecting to, I think maybe there's a chance it's not great art. I mean, just as there's a chance that the movies and comics that I'm pointing to that got missed out on by any but a small select few, as much as I think they're great art, I might be wrong on that one. Just saying.
I think Adam's point about the country being founded by capitalists has something to do with it. I think that popular music is characterized by its being easily commodified. That is, by its being something you can sell to people, something you can consume quickly and easily, that you can market to huge groups of people. And a lot of people, a lot of postmodernists, in fact, have called into question the distinction between high art and pop art.
Oh, come now. Some of the high art out there was the pop art of its day. Shakespeare comes to mind. I mean, people would watch Shakespeare plays for fun back in the day, and now we consider it high art. I mean, future generations may go down the line and take a look at, say, Chumbawamba, or They Might Be Giants, or you're going to mention Justin Bieber. They may look at that and go, this is what people loved back then, and now we have nothing like it, and ooh, it's so amazing. It connected to so many people. It mentioned all of these things about feelings and emotions, because they usually do. I mean, come on, how many pop songs are about people being in love? I'd say the vast, vast, vast majority. But then you might look at bands like U2, for example, who have done a few songs about the environment, and they might go, and they used it as a way to be activists and blah-de-blah-de-blah. I mean, who knows how future generations of archaeologists will treat our generation? Who knows? And that could be kind of interesting, actually. I wish I had a time machine to go see how they look at our world today and royally fuck it up, because I'm sure that we get a lot of history wrong from way back when. So when you talk about high art and low art or pop art or highly marketable art, I don't think that's a fair distinction. I really, really don't. Just saying.
But I think I don't know. I'm actually, I still old-fashionedly believe that I can cling to that distinction as one that's useful, at least.
Quick thought. Where do you classify movie composers? John Williams, James Newton Howard, Jerry Goldsmith, Alan Silvestri, those kind of guys. Clearly what they're doing is pop art, but it's like orchestral. It's sort of high art style. It's classical style, but it's for pop culture. Where do you classify them, I wonder? Just asking.
That is, I think, among other things, high art, or what I guess what you could call high art, it resists commodification. It's complicated. It takes time to learn. Its payoffs are great, but you have to commit yourself in order to appreciate it.
I point again to those different versions of Pachelbel's Canon in D that I've got. I don't think you really have to push yourself to appreciate this stuff. I really don't. So I'm not sure that's a fair distinction.
But it's difficult to turn into a consumable little soundbite or a little tweetable 3-minute radio playlist. It's not something that you can mass market that way.
Well, not to harp on Canon in D too much, but I do remember seeing a Wheat Thins commercial that used a rock version of it. So, actually, yeah, you can. And that's not the only commercial I've seen that's used classical music. So, no, that's simply not the case.
Americans are suspect of it. They don't know anything about it. They don't want to know anything about it. And those who like it are suspected of snobbery, elitism, and so on, as indeed I constantly am.
But see, I think a lot of Americans do genuinely feel looked down upon by people who are into the more classical music. A lot of us do feel like we are pointed at and called stupid. I mean, maybe not in so many words, but it does happen. And that can foster some pretty ugly feelings in some people. And it does sort of seem as though you're not allowed to like both. That you have to do one or the other. Either you're a rock person or you're a classical person. Now, as I said, here's ye old iPod, right? I got both on here. Not a lot of the classical stuff, probably more pop stuff. Granted, the pop music I like to listen to tends to not be the mainstream pop stuff. Come on, my favorite band is Roxette. If you're here in the United States, sometimes you have to explain who they are, even though people know their songs pretty darn well, which kind of makes me a little bit cranky. There's also some bands that I really, really love that are super freaking obscure, that no one else has really listened to much. And some bands that have been defunct for a while. The point is that there's a lot of stuff that we find ourselves liking that other people don't, and vice versa. And we tend to look down our nose at them for that, where it's like, oh, you've never heard of Cub? Really? They were such an awesome band. They Might Be Giants covered one of their songs. Come on. How have you never heard of Cub? What's wrong with you? There is something wrong with you. You are not a good person. You're not smart. You're not intelligent. Well, that's the way some people can be made to feel when you can't tell the difference between Bach or Brahms or Mozart or any of those folks. And, I'm not saying that's your fault, but there are people out there who do that. And there's people who do it on the other side, too. So, I can see where this rivalry comes from. Fair or not, justified or not, a good idea or not. I can see where it comes from.
What's interesting to me is that beneath all this insistence on, the greatness of pop culture, of commodifiable art, and the suspicion of the pompous presumptiveness of high art and classical music, there's a longing for greater art than we have access to, and it expresses itself kind of immaturely on almost any YouTube video you go to. And I mean, like, almost anyone. It's unbelievable. You'll find some comment, and perhaps this is not as true as it used to be about a year ago, but often the top-rated comment, even, will be something about Justin Bieber and how bad Justin Bieber is and how angry we are about Justin Bieber and how he looks like a girl and how he sings like a girl and how he's a little faggot and how we hate him so much, oh my god. And I sense a great deal of frustration with popular music. So many people seem to really hate it.
No, see, I disagree. I think it's not so much pop music that people don't like. It's this kind of pop music. I mean, come on, take me, still living in the 80s, huh? I mean, you should see some of the playlists on here. Hell, there's stuff from the 90s even. But it's not so much that we don't like pop music. It's that this generation's pop music makes us go, nah. I mean, one thing I cannot stand is what I call oonce techno, where it's all oonce, 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 oonce the whole time, and that's it. Not a fan. Really not a fan. I prefer something with a bit more melody to it, but still pop music. I mean, I can name tons and tons of bands from when I was a little kid that I still listen to all the time that I absolutely adore and I'm not complaining about. And it makes me think the kids who love Justin Bieber now, their kids are going to have to come up with something severely offensive to make them go, ooh, no, 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 no. Give me Justin Bieber back. It's going to happen. It's all down to taste. I mean, yeah, there's those of us who can't stand Justin Bieber, want the kid dead, and actually I'm not even among them because I've only knowingly listened to one of his songs, honestly. What I heard I didn't like, but, you know, it's not my thing. Point is that enough of us want him dead, but there's enough people who love him, who think he's awesome. So, you know, I mean, it's all down to taste. It really, really is. It's not a frustration with pop music. I'm willing to bet my parents didn't much care for the shit I listened to when I was younger. You know? I'm willing to bet every time they heard Domo Arigato, Mr. Roboto, they flipped their frickin' lids. I mean, you know, every generation doesn't like the next generation's and the previous generation's pop music. That's just all there is to it. Granted, I've later in life kind of developed a taste for 50s pop music, you know, but, well, I still like the 80s too. There's stuff in the 90s and the 2000s that I'm learning to like. I mean, there's some pop punk that makes me go, ooh, you know? So, yeah, I'm sorry, but I don't agree with your premise. I really don't.
And I think it's too bad that instead of being curious to learn about these forms of art, which so many Americans don't know about, people instead react with suspicion and they get defensive about the fact that they don't know it.
But see, I'm not entirely convinced that they would feel defensive like that if it weren't treated as though, oh, this is so much higher, this is so much better than the stuff you listen to, than the crap you listen to, the low stuff that you listen to. They're talked down to. No wonder they're suspicious. You know, if it was more a matter of, here's a style, and here's a style, we like this, you like that, blah, 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 and it wasn't like a judgment call like that, then maybe people would be more disposed to go and, well, tell me more about this classical shit you seem to like. I have a feeling. I mean, goodness knows that I have seen people and occasionally been talked down to because I wasn't into this classical orchestral music that really just didn't speak to me. It really doesn't. I mean, the closest I get, I mentioned movie composers before. You know, John Williams, James Newton Howard, Jerry Goldsmith, Alan Silvestri. To a much, 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 much lesser degree, Danny Elfman, but regardless. Point is, they do the kind of allegedly higher art that you talk about, but for pop culture. So, how do you even classify them? But that's the closest I've ever really come to being interested in that kind of art. And, maybe I'd be more interested in the classical stuff if either A, I really felt something from it, or two, if the people who tried to tell me I should prefer that to the pop music were not, talking down to me when they do it. Just saying. And
this is an experience I really had when I wrote about a year and a half ago. I wrote an article for the Georgetown's school newspaper, an editorial in which I said I thought it was amazing that students at this prestigious university, where supposedly the great intelligent youths of our country are going to study, how these kids listen to the most infantile music, like Kesha and Lady Gaga. They're listening to party songs, and that's fine. I have nothing against party music. I have nothing against going out and having fun. Well, I'm obviously not a fun person myself, but I respect those who do engage in fun. And my problem is not that people listen to Lady Gaga and Kesha. My problem is that's all they listen to, and these are supposedly educated people.
But don't you see how that's, kind of talking down to them, really? I mean, you're saying, essentially, you're educated, yet you don't listen to what makes me go, ooh, you don't listen to what touches me in certain ways. I mean, I can't say that one style of music is objectively better than another. I mean, maybe we can say it's objectively more complicated in one way or another, but that doesn't mean that it touches people in the same ways. I mean, I've known people who've listened to bits of music that made me feel, I don't know, like something magical could happen in some really amazing way, the way certain movies have made me feel. And to them, they were like crying sob fest songs. It's happened. People are touched in different ways, and it has nothing to do with their education necessarily. It could just be that the style doesn't grab them. So, honestly, it sounds to me like you're talking down to them, like you're saying you're educated, you should like this, and if you don't, well, there's clearly something wrong with your taste buds musically. And, I mean, I'm hoping you can see how people might not respond well to that. I'm just saying.
What a pretentious asshole I must be that I expect everyone to be able to distinguish Bach from Wagner.
Well, what good would it do me? Why would I need this information? I mean, unless I actually listen to Bach and Wagner, why do I care? Seriously, I mean, unless I have to identify them at some point, unless I say to someone when I'm making one of my animations, can you get me a version of Ride of the Valkyries, and they ask me who the hell it's by, I can tell them. I mean, unless that happens, why do I need to know? Why is it important? Unless I want to listen to something by one of those composers, why do I need to know?
I don't know. Maybe I'm just being an old-fashioned, pretentious bore, and I should loosen up and listen to Kesha. But no, that's wrong.
Well, come on. There are certain kinds of pop music I don't much care for. I'm not sure I've ever knowingly listened to Kesha. I have a vague notion of what her music might be like, but then again, perhaps I'm jumping to conclusions. Regardless, point being that just because I happen to like a lot of pop music doesn't mean that I can't appreciate other kinds of pop music, and it doesn't mean I can't appreciate the more classical style music. I can. On occasion I do. But the fact is that I'm not really necessarily assigning value judgments to it based on anything other than whether I find myself enjoying the bit of music at the time. There have been times where I've heard bits of classical music where ordinarily I'd go, this just isn't my thing, it's not making me happy. But that particular piece made me go, oh, I'm loving this is perfect, this is wonderful, what is it? And someone tells me and I go, really? Because I'm not into one of those old school composer types, and yet here I am loving this, what happened? It happens. Maybe someday you'll find some pop music that makes you go, ooh, maybe. I mean, I don't know. But it'd be nice if it did, because, well, you don't have to listen to Kesha, but but I can name a number of bands out there that you might dig like a backhoe. Give it a try. I mean, if you want us to try your classical music, turnabout's fair play, pal. Just saying.
I think that if you're not willing to give more sophisticated music a chance, then you're not entitled to complain about Justin Bieber. You deserve Justin Bieber.
Well, I'll tell you what then. Meet me halfway. When your more sophisticated, complicated music gets to be more upbeat, fast-paced, energetic, fun, and bouncy, when your music makes me want to do this, then I'll listen to it. But not before. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please think. Please take the time to rate this video. And hey, if you dig what I do, subscribe. And please visit my Zazzle store, where you'll find all kinds of BionicDance merchandise. Rating videos has been found to cause fresher breath, enhanced metabolism, and greater sexual magnetism.